Yes, so last week there was drama in Parliament, and what happened? Of course, just about 2 weeks ago, the budget statement was read in Parliament by the Minister of Finance, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta. Now, there are a lot of controversial things that popped up, including the e-levy that has been the talk of town. Now, Parliament, of course, needed to debate over this budget statement to either accept or reject the policies that were proposed to it. And the majority walked out at some point because there was Asidu Nketia, who is the General Secretary of the NDC, on the floor. There were huge debates. And so let's just see what happened, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
For the first time in the Fourth Republic, a budget statement of an administration was rejected on the floor of Parliament based on the decision of the Speaker of the House. On the day the budget statement was scheduled to be debated and approved, the prayer from the Minister for Finance to have consultations with the leadership of both sides of the House degenerated into chaos and a walkout by the majority over whether ministers of state who are not MPs should remain in the House. After suspension of proceedings, the Speaker eventually reconvened the House and put the question on whether the budget statement should be approved or not.
Those in favor of the approval of motion number 11 on the order paper, which says, and I read, that this Honorable House approves the budget statement and economic policy of the government for the year ending 31st December 2022. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against the motion say no. Honorable members, clearly the noes have it. The motion is accordingly lost.
With the absence of the majority from the floor and the rejection of the budget, Minority Leader Harry Naidusu addressed the press.
My caucus, which has stood firm in solidarity and in support to do right for the people of Ghana.
Thank the media.
And to thank the media for staying put. You've done so well. He probably could have been better off standing down e-levy and getting the rest of the budget with adjustment and assurance to tidal waves approved. That would have been better for him than this runaway. You cannot run away from your own budget. You cannot run away from your own budget and run away from your own request for division. So we look forward to debating a new budget.
The Majority Leader later at a press briefing after a caucus meeting raised red flags about the decision and the conduct of the Speaker and insisted that the budget has not been rejected.
No question, absolutely no question for decision in the House shall be proposed for determination unless there are present in the House not less than 1/2 of all the members of the House. And except otherwise provided in the Constitution, the question proposed shall be determined by the majority of votes of members present and voting. Assuming without admitting that he had 137 members in the chamber, there was still less than 1/2 of the 275. And by necessary implication, that exercise that he engaged in or supervised is a complete nullity. It's a complete nullity. And I believe that whoever presided should bow down his head in shame. In the fullness of time, the proper thing will be done.
Meanwhile, some Ghanaians have been reacting to the rejection of the budget by the minority.
Okay, the rejection of the ballot, the budget, I think is good due to the tax. Right now, everybody is complaining about the tax on the momo.
All right, so some of the snippets there showing you, give you an idea of what it is that happened. We want to speak with the Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Dr. Rashid Draman. Good morning, Dr. Rashid.
Good morning.
Yes, Dr. Draman. So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? That's a very interesting question, but maybe let's look at where we are coming from first. For me, when I follow the events in Parliament around the budget, my brother, the question that kept running through my mind is that, in the research that we do, and in the budget process across the world, parliaments are categorized into three. The first group of parliaments is the parliaments that have budget making powers. Then the second group is parliaments that have budget influencing powers. And the third group are parliaments that do not have either the power to make the budget or the power to influence the budget, so they just simply approve whatever comes before the House. Now, over the years, we have always placed our Parliament in the third category.
Okay.
Because we've never had this. Anytime the budget comes before the House, of course, there is some debate. And then when the Right Honorable Speaker puts a question, the budget passes. Now, all of a sudden we woke up last week to realize that no, it looks like our Parliament has been short-changing Ghanaians over the years because of the fact that over the years the NDC had numbers in Parliament, the MPP had numbers in Parliament. So we never had this challenge.
Yeah.
But it didn't mean that Ghanaians didn't have concerns about aspects of the budget, whether those presented by the NDC government or those presented by the MPP government. So I think this is a very, very important aspect that we don't need to lose upon ourselves as a country. And for us, I think we would like to interrogate this further, to just try to understand where did this newfound power all of a sudden come from? If it's indeed in the Constitution, as we know it is, then over the years, I think successive parliaments have done a lot of disservice to the citizens of this country. We didn't get what we actually deserved when it came to allocations and policies in the budget. But let's go, fast forward. Where do we go from here? Right from day one, and day one here is January 7 of 2021. I think most of us have said on your platform and other platforms that, one of the most important elements that we need in this Parliament, more than anything, is consensus, dialogue, and constant negotiation, so that we can walk through this uncharted kind of path, because a lot of things are new in this Parliament, and it was not going to take just the legalities to be able to navigate the challenges that this Parliament faces. It was going to take a lot of pragmatism. It was going to take a lot of dialogue and negotiation continuously. But somehow in the last 11 months, I think this has been lost upon us. Our leaders, the leaders of Parliament, haven't placed this as a very important element. Because look, the finance minister was in the House praying for some discussion, some dialogue, which is very good, and this is what we would like to see. We didn't want to see this at the time that it was the finance minister was trying to get it done, because that was too late in the day, and we said this on big issues over the weekend.
Okay.
That was too late in the day. At the time that the question was being put, that was not the time to begin to do dialogue and negotiation. The time for dialogue and negotiation was several weeks ago. And so for me, I think that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. And the earlier they both come together, because look, otherwise it's going to affect their fortunes both ways. I mean, the NDC can be affected because if what they do eventually becomes difficult for the government, and then the government gets obstructed, then it becomes counterproductive for the NDC in terms of their likability for 2024. So I think there is some kind of continuous dialogue that is needed. And then beyond that, I think there's also some kind of consensus that is needed between the parties and the Right Honorable Speaker. Because look, the Speaker has enormous powers. I mean, the Constitution and in the standing orders.
Yeah.
But over the past months, we've had instances when some members will say, well, the Speaker doesn't have a vote, the Speaker has no powers, and so on. On that day, when the minister prayed for him, to allow him some time to have some consensus and some discussion, I am sure that if there was good faith, if there was good relationship between the Speaker and members of Parliament, particularly from the other side, I mean, this would have been allowed, and perhaps we wouldn't have seen the outcome that we had seen. But the Right Honorable Speaker, I'm sure, sitting where he was saying, well, I have the power to either allow the minister or not to allow him.
Yeah.
He exercised that power. And now people are saying all kinds of things. So I want both sides, look, they have to be practical. They have to be real. The days when they had the numbers, that is, both sides had the numbers, and they can do whatever they want to do, despite position, despite the cry from the minority, those days are far gone, at least not in this day Parliament. And we need to wake up to that reality.
Yeah. So the majority side said that they had some challenges. I don't know what your comments are on this. The fact that there's no question that's supposed to be permitted except there's the numbers in the House that are present are adequate. What are your comments on this?
Well, I mean, they were talking about, it has to be half of Parliament.
Yes.
Now, half of Parliament today, and that's the reality again that everybody has to wake up to. Half of Parliament is supposed to be 137.5.
Yes.
And we cannot have 137.5 in terms of human beings.
Yes.
So practically half of Parliament would be the other side of the House. That is the NDC side. But this is an interpretation that perhaps maybe the courts would have to look at. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot make any pronouncement on this. But that is a reality again that they have to keep in mind. That at every point in time, it will be considered that if the NDC is full, in each seats, all the 137 members are there. It might be considered to be the half of the House. And again, there are some who say the members were there when the question was put. That's the other side, the NPP.
Okay.
And then they walk out when the vote was going to be done. So some say it's just tantamount to getting up and going to the washroom when the vote was being counted. And so if by the time you come back the votes are counted, then you will have to blame yourself. But you see, underneath all this is one reality, that there is no one side that has enough numbers to get things done as it has been done before.
Yeah.
I think that this is a reality that, because we had things like people like Honorable Kennedy and Japan were out of the country, they were not in parliament and so on, but all of a sudden they showed up on the day that the vote was going to be counted. And many are saying this was done just so that they can have the numbers. I mean, in previous years, I don't think that this would have been necessary. Because, for instance, in the 7th Parliament, the NPP had an advantage of almost 70 seats. So even if you have 30 members out of the jurisdiction, they could still get the simple majority that was needed. But today, that's not the case. And for me, that is why it is important that bridges are built. Because right now, they are both busy, destroying the bridges. I'm talking about both the NDC and the NPP. When you hear what they even the press conference that we had from both sides, it doesn't suggest a group that is willing to talk to each other. That is quite unfortunate. At the end of the day, look, the minister is not going to get everything that he has put in the budget, not in this parliament. But the NDC also is not going to get all that it has asked for.
Okay.
Which supposes now that there has to be some dialogue. The minister would have to give in to a certain extent. The NDC would have to claw back to a certain extent some of the demands. And then we get to the middle where at least it becomes a win-win. Nobody gets 100%, but you get something. We saw that recently in the US when President Biden got half of what he took to Congress. He didn't get everything, but he said, well, if you get half a loaf, it's better than no bread, and the country can move. And I think that is the kind of situation we find ourselves in at this point in this 8th Parliament.
So, Dr. Dramane, let's look at really moving forward. At this point, what are the options that are available? 1, for the majority, 2, for the minority, and then 3, for the government as it stands.
And 4 for us as ordinary citizens.
Well, we're part of the government, aren't we?
Well, I think the option for the majority, and by extension, I think the government, is what I just said earlier, that look, they are not going to get all that has been put in the budget. The government would have to take a second look at some of the policies. E-levy, for instance, I think not only the minority, but if you take your microphone right now and go on the street, maybe 8 out of 10 Ghanaians are going to tell you that they disagree with this. The government would have to pay attention to that. There are certain other policies, because on one breath we say we are digitizing, on another breath we say we are putting some policies that might, I don't know, I'm not a specialist in this, but from the layman's point of view, that policy is certainly going to set back the clock of digitization. Because if you remember the old days when people didn't even want to have anything to do with the banks. Our mothers would put their monies in the house because they say, no, you take your money to the bank, they take these charges, they take that. Business people, businessmen and women put their monies under their mattresses. Today we are saying we want a cashless economy, we want a digital economy, and that has worked very well over the last couple of years. To the extent that today I can send money to the village to my mother, and she can manipulate the phone and get money. If we are not careful, this I think would have the counter effect, and it could set back all the gains that the country has made in terms of digitization. So this is one. There are other concerns that they have raised. So the government would have to look at this very carefully, and every government has to be a listening government, because you do these things. Policy is made to benefit the people.
Right.
And if the people say, this policy is not going to benefit us, I think the government has to eat humble pie and just take a careful look at this.
Absolutely.
Well,
The minority side, they have a lot of demands. They have to make sure that those demands are realistic. And then perhaps in the conversation with the Minister of Finance, they might come to understand, what we need as a kind of financial envelope to run the country. So if those demands cannot be taken into account, I think they can be taken through the process and some understanding can be reached. Otherwise, if they push through and they dig in, I'm talking about the minority here, and they keep rejecting whatever comes forward, we might end up in a situation where there will be government shutdown. And when there is, and people cannot get bread and butter, they will start blaming the minority for that, and that will be counterproductive for the minority as well. So I think we need to weigh this very carefully. Both sides will need to weigh this very, very carefully.
all right, Dr. Rashid Draman, we really appreciate your thoughts and insights on this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast Daily. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So that was Dr. Rashid Draman, who is the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, sharing his thoughts and insights. But we spoke to some Ghanaians, on their thoughts on what's going on. Let's take a look at what they said.
Okay, the rejection of the ballot, the budget, I think is good due to the tax. Right now, everybody is complaining about the tax on the Momo. So I think they have to do something about it.
What do you think should be done about it?
I think looking at the budget and looking at the taxes on the Momo, and there's an increasement of the fuel because taxi drivers and the drivers are complaining about the fuel. It's very, very high. So I think maybe they have to change it. They have to change certain things in it. And they have to create more jobs for the youth so that if they are taxing them on the Momo or fuel prices going up, it will be a little, they can even manage it a little.
And yeah, Papa, for so be a necessary say one book. Because Crobia Paso Chechiri Croa. A task. I brought task and Roger, no one to be a boy, a busy on the Biache. Now in Africa, now Ghana, task once a boy, I want to say one MP. So see a cousin, a bow, Sika, Ato, Pajaro, Lankus, and in Yamada, Parliament, I want, the opposition, I want. Then a bebois or mine, am I in Yaya Coson? Once I do the one impedance. And yet.
It will win Yanka and run a drunk as almost passing a year G2.
Sanet, Minyayanka is a Sunka. One pass, Naya Juma. Go Crofo P. Yajuba wanting to attack. Oh, Crofo P. And Maya Tunta did you be a no to attack. Such P. wanting to attack. But sadly, a better be a we can do you in a better. Into a Bama. Government in any scat there, I never be as a dear. Was Obia Sola was a school. Obia Sola was a car quine, where should be per se. Nay, I need to come for Corona, and I say I find you.
So you heard some ordinary citizens on the streets of Ghana who are reacting to the 2022 budget statement and matters thereof arising. We have some messages from our viewers as well. Sami Boachi from Asamankesi says the evidence on the grounds is very clearly, and it's very clear and tells you that the E-level is extremely good, and it will enable us to develop and fix the country to keep NDC-led Mahama still in opposition, and may he live long to see the MPP good governance, and that is why they are kicking against it. So the politics has come into the conversation.
I know, right?
Yao from Taifa says Ghanaians should ignore the calculated attempt to reject the 2022 budget statement by the minority MPs with the help from the Speaker, because Article 104 of the 1992 Constitution and Order 109 of the Standing Orders of the Parliament are very clear that the two provisions together require that at least 138 MPs needed to have been present in the chamber at the time of purported vote. Therefore, the claim that the 2022 budget has been rejected by 137 MPs in the House is completely null, void, and unconstitutional. and I mean, if you listen to Dr. Draman, he was saying that technically you need 137.5 people, but you can't have 137.5. So the question is, just looking at the NDC side, so your minority side, your majority side, is that enough to say that we have a quorum we can vote?
It says no less than half.
Yeah, it's
so
very,
you have to have,
dicey, but interesting conversations. Good to know that our citizens know the Constitution.
They know what's up. They know what's up. Okay, there are a couple more. God bless the minority for working in the interest of Ghana. The explanation by the majority leader, Honorable Osei Mensah-Bonsu, as to why they walked out of Parliament is a face-saving gimmick. It was shameful and regrettable since President Kufuor and Bawumia assumed office. They have introduced over 28 new taxes and gotten more money than any government, but nothing to show for it. Say no to Bawumia tax. Say no to Sewa Bruni budget. All right, and the last one here is coming from Kosami in Nima. He says, at a point, the minority drew the attention of Parliament to the continuous absence of the finance minister and the vice president, who happens to be the leader of the economic management team in Parliament. But the majority arrogantly rubbished the call and made nonsense of why the finance minister. Okay, your message here seems a little bit confusing, but anyway, you know what? Keep sending messages coming through. We're going to take a short break.
Before that, I mean, there's a poll running on Twitter on the City TV handle, so please go there. And we're just asking you a simple question: is the rejection of the 2022 budget a reflection of Ghanaians' feedback? Hashtag Breakfast Daily. Just go there, and then very quickly before we go, just want to outline, and we're getting this from citynewsroom.com. There's an article there that says 5 issues minority wants captured in a revised 2022 budget. So I'll just run through the broad headings. Suspend the electronic transaction levy, which we're calling the e-levy. 2, the withdrawal of Ijapa. 3, provide for the tidal waves disaster. So they want the budget to capture that, because clearly tidal waves are going to be happening for some time, and we need to think about a sea defense. All those conversations that came up a few weeks ago. Number 4, properly reconstruct the wording relating to the Aker Energy. Yes. And number 5, review the benchmark value for imports. So those are the 5 main things that the minority is calling for to be included in the revised, what we're hoping will be a revised 2022 budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take a short break. Breakfast Daily will continue after this.